Pretty amazing memories, you know, I'm not bragging about it, I've just been lucky, I suppose. Took my boy when he was 10, that was his first carp. Off the point that was, 29 and a half, I think. Proper carp on the Levery crew. Fat Speckles. That was a character, my first ever 30 out of there, Basil. Arab with the universe. Life's too short when you got a job, isn't it? I've fished a lot of lakes in my time, but there's one place that always draws me back, and it's here, Elstow. Come on, little fella, get in that net. I was just thinking of taking a gulp when that went off, so shame to waste it, isn't it? Typical Elstow, just the beautiful skin, it's just that unique. Bit lively, this one. They've been spawning very recently, a couple of scales come loose during spawning. Here we go, one of the stockies brought on from the eggs of the originals, so it's a proper Elstow, but just in miniature. This fish was probably stocked 2017, a mid-single. Probably go on to be one of the Elstow 40s of, you know, its parents. I just love fishing here, and I love seeing these things just keep coming through. There'll never be any different fish in here, just these. Yeah, we try to keep them in good condition, so looks like this one, like I said before, has been knocked about a bit during spawning. They've spawned not too long ago. Just want to make sure it's perfect. There she is, all treated up, ready for another day. Perhaps see you when you're 40 one day. That's what it's all about. This is another stocky, but this time a much earlier stocking. You can see the age in the fish. I'll be able to check the records and see exactly when it was stocked. But this is so typical of the old Elstow strain. Beautiful little sequin scales. Lovely motley skin. Just a lovely carp. Back in '93 when I joined, it was quite apparent from the real beginning that the fish wouldn't last forever. They was dying for various reasons. Over the years there's been predation, after spawning there was casualties. One day I was lucky enough to find a group of fish spawning. Len was always stocking fish from fish farmers and we just didn't want that. We wanted the original stock to continue, so just a bit of pot luck really. None of us really knew what we was doing, but I was lucky to find a group of the A-team spawning. Took the eggs off the weed, or took the weed with the eggs in, threw them in a little pond, and they hatched. A few of us fed them on with bits of our spod and stuff, and they grew, and we was able to add to the stock, which was a bit controversial at the time because there was a lot of people there. It was just coming into its heyday, you know, the 40-pounders was becoming quite common. All the trophy hunters off the circuit and that wanted to be in here catching 40-pounders, so it was quite difficult to justify introducing 5-pounders, as certain high-profile anglers made my life a nightmare at the time, saying how could some idiot put singles in here when all they want to do is catch 40-pounders. The original stock, as far as I know, you know, I may stand corrected, but as far as I know, the originals are from the mid-70s, which when I joined would have put them sort of 25 years old really. These fish was quite an unknown quantity at the time. We didn't know. We've been extremely lucky with all the problems we've had over the years. These fish seem to be a strain that live exceptionally long. Like at the present day, a lot of these fish are over 45 years old. It made only sense, the ethics of the place would be to only introduce fish born from the spawn of the originals. Len could have filled it up with Simmos like he did Oxford, but we just didn't want it. Just through trial and error, we managed to start breeding our own, and have done ever since till the present day really. 2005 was the first time we started to introduce the small fish we'd bred on. They was round about the £5 mark, just say for argument's sake. Didn't think too much of it at the time. Slipped them in. There was a bit of controversy, so we limited it to only 30 fish going in. They're on site, same water table, everything would be okay, so we put 30 in and see how it went. They come out quite a bit to start with, then just went missing. Over the years they've steadily grown on, because they've never been carp for rapid growth rates really, the originals. Some of them fish now from 2005, I should think mostly they're over £30 now, and we've introduced selected ones at different times to top it up as we go along, as we never encountered any problems whatsoever. Brings us round to sort of 2011. Gavin, one of the members, helped Len out and he dug this pond that's behind me now. Some of the other small fish off the ponds was transferred to it and then fed properly, or more consistently. The members put in their leftovers of their bait when they went home, etc, etc. And in 2013, the first of the fish we was growing on in this particular pond was acceptable to put in the lake. So we fished them out, rod and line, added a few at a time. Some of them fish already that was released in 2013, mid-30s, were members update photographs with me and let me know what's going on in there. And it's doing really well. It seems like the latter ones that got stocked out of this stock pond have already caught the first lot up. It's just wall-to-wall 30s really. It's just like a new beginning from the original Elstow that's sadly come to its peak in the mid-2000s. One by one, the original stock gets fewer and fewer. It's very difficult to keep an accurate number, but possibly down to, just say for argument's sake, around the 50 mark of the originals. All the new ones that are coming through are just the same as the old ones, you know, just brand new. Yeah, every time I walk round here, I bring the old dog, or if I'm fishing, I come round, have a look round the fence, make sure it's all secure. Everything's okay. Feed them a bit of pellet. It gives me a great pride really that it just keeps carrying on and we can take a handful at a time every time we think it's right to introduce some, and it's just like a little carp factory. Was fascinated with scaly ones because there weren't a great deal of scaly ones in here. Now everything's scaly. It's just like me being back at Oxford again, do you know what I mean? Stoneacres or something, or Hardwick. It just got a little bit too much, and there's scalies everywhere, and the originals was quite lacking in that department. It's a massive satisfaction now that behind me in this little pond there's levers, the levery crew, modern lot. There's all sorts, you know, there's still scaly ones, there's a lot of Linears, a few fully scaled in here. It's just like a factory of originals, and it just gives me so much pride to know that all the people that have also helped with the project, it's great what's been achieved, you know. We didn't really want to go to a fish farmer. I'm not saying anything wrong, it's brilliant what they do, but it's just so nice to know that we've got clones of all the original stock. It's been like almost 30 years worth of work. It just makes me happy that this is the way it's panned out. The important thing to remember about this lake is all the lakes like in Oxfordshire I've fished, the famous Linear's waters over there. It's just chalk and cheese really. A gravel pit may have 12-foot average with a bar that's pretty insignificant. In here, the bars are just off the scale really. 30-foot a back of one, 8-foot on top of some of them. And the difference is, unless you can fish really accurate with, say, for argument's sake, all 3 rods like you see advertised through venues like Linear Oxford, 3 on a spot tight. This is where it's really evolved from. If you've got 30-foot of water all around you and it rises up to 8 feet, at the peak, you might have something like the size of a bivvy, and then you've got to get all 3 chances because there's not a productive other area option in your swim. You've got to try and get 3 rods on a bite spot where if 1 rod goes, there's still 2 more chances. If you split the rods up, it lessens your chances in my opinion. So it's best to fish 1 bite spot with extreme accuracy and super tight baiting. I know it goes on other lakes, but this is the extremes of it. If you're sloppy on here, so are your success rates. At the moment, my standard approach would be to get a bucket, maybe a kilo of pellet, mixed pellets, a kilo or 2 of boilies, add a tin of corn, all the little treats and that they just can't resist, and wait to provoke a feeding response, then adjust the mix as you go really. But obviously the longer that can sit out there on the bottom, your oil bleed off will stop as long as you don't use ridiculously high oil pellets. And then you can tell a lot of what's going on in your swim, whether the fish are present or whether you're being messed with, by reading the surface of the water. You understand a lot more about the swim. So that's my approach anyway. Everybody on here is different, they don't all copy each other. But that's just the way I like to fish, because I can understand me swim a lot better. Right, we've had a bit of a thunderstorm after an horrific hot day. Got no time left really, got to try and get out before dark, but it's pretty important we find the right bit, so here goes. Good solid thump anyway. Just trying to fish on the front edge of the bar, but I know the top of it's completely weeded up, so it's a bit hit and miss. That feels nice and clean though. Where the float is at the moment, it's just on the front edge of the bar. If I pull it back any further, it's going to fall straight to the bottom into the deep water. It seems to be quite clear where the fish have fed against that front edge of the bar, but it's so important on here to make sure you don't invest the bait in the wrong place, because you'll be sitting here for an awful long time. I'm going to put these Ronnie rigs out with a little bag to flatten the bottom as they settle. They're critically balanced, so once the bags are burnt off, they'll just be sitting on top hopefully. If all goes according to plan, and should stay in pole position for the morning at bite time. That's the idea. Whether we get away with it or not, we'll see. I'd usually use, if it was a granite type of bottom where the fish have gnawed it away like concrete, I'd put a slip D on and a little bag, slid down the hook link the same. But that's a bit hit and miss out there, sketchy, call it what you want. So you want to give yourself the best chance of being presented for when the fish turn up. Nice geese. This is a tricky bit. It's last knock-ins, we can't afford to mess this up. We've got one probably 12 inches either side of the float, and the centre rod's swung in on the back of the float. We've got taut lines, no slack at this point, they're like tram lines if you look off rod tops. We need now to take this marker out of the equation without taking out the lines. So to do this, I'm going to hang the indicators on the tight lines. The lines are on, the buzzers are on maximum sensitivity, so they register anything. So this is the hard bit. Then you get your marker back without disturbing anything. So alarm all the alarms and cross my fingers, I think. What we're going to do now is nurse that float back down to the lead. I've got no boom or anything, it's just the eye of the swivel now. Now if we've got it all right, I've made direct contact to the lead now with a marker pulled down to it. There's a big void between me and the bar. So in theory, when I tighten up now and pull it off the bar, it should go right between the lines, if we're lucky. Looks like we've got away with it. No movement on the indicators or the bobbins. Just nice and steady through. It's coming straight up the middle of the two, the centre and the right hand line. So I don't want to lift it till I know them lines are tight going straight out to the bar. Here's the marker now in the weed bed on the margin. So I've brought it in lower than the lines. So the job's a good one. We're just about to lose the light, so it worked out quite well. Just put the old marker rod away. We've got the leads out there now, I would say 1 metre or 3 foot, and there's 12 inches equally spaced between all the leads. So basically I'm fishing all my eggs in one basket. Now what we've got to do, we know the lines are separated, we've got our marker out. We turn all the alarms off, knock the indicators off. Make sure check our clutches, because we don't want a fish taking any line if we get a take. If it kites off to the right, it's through some really serious weed that's full of mussels and could result in a cut off. I've got 20-pound line just to make sure, give me the best chance. Just backing it right off. I'll just let them settle now. There's a huge gully between where I am, is about 11 feet deep, and in the gully's in the excess of 20. So I'll just let the lines, I don't want them to tighten up in the night, get a liner and a lead roll down the bar, because I'm fishing on the front face of it. So we just let that settle for a minute and go and get some bait. If you was to try and class this lake, put it into a category, it's got to be like, it's the working man's lake really. We have certain rules to prevent people just camping here indefinitely. 72 hours maximum stay, can't return within 24. Then there's rotated weekends for A and B rota. Same rules apply as midweek. So everybody who's got a job has got a fair chance that they can get in the go-in swim, or what could be the go-in swim. There's no favouritism on here at all. Whether it's me, the bailiff, I can't do nothing different to the members. We all fish with etiquette. It's the big difference to most places nowadays. And a part of this level playing field is the draw. If I just go into it quickly, it just shows you sort of how fair it is for everybody really. Whether you've got all the time in the world or you work. If you're lucky enough that you can take a day's holiday or have shift work, whereas on your particular rota, you can come fishing on the Friday. The anglers that have fished up until that point of 10 AM on a Friday morning have to pack up, let everything settle on the lake while the rota begin to form before 11:30 draw. This gives them a chance to walk round, talk to a couple of people if there's anyone around, view for themselves any fish activity or where they might be held up in the corners or holding areas or showing fish. It gives everybody a chance to go into where they believe their best option is, depending on how they come out of the draw bag, or the bag of doom as we call it. The traditional way to carry out the Elstow draw is everyone that arrives to take place in the draw for fishing over the weekend will each have a £1 coin, which will be marked 1 to how many participants are in the car park, and then put into the bag of doom, or the draw bag. And then what we'll do is one at a time offer it round the crowd of people that are assembled to fish. Lowest number, first choice. Whoever comes last in tradition gets all the £1 coins for coming last, and obviously last place in the draw. We'll put that there momentarily. Yeah, we've moved down here quick. We We don't want to leave it too late. Don't really want to mess with the marker. Know pretty much where the spot is. Just get them in position, get some bait over the top before they move out of the bay to my right. We really think a lot of the anglers that fish here frequently, and have done in the past, look at it more like a chessboard. Whereas on a normal lake I'd fish, it would all be about effort equals reward and moving to showing fish. This is more strategy really. If you can imagine them fish moving around off of pressure to another place, you've got to try and strategically fish the area in your swim as though the fish are there to the best of your ability, and then sometimes it can be a little bit of waiting till bite time. They might move from feature to feature, feed in different areas, different times. It never gets boring. They change their habits and you have to evolve with them. It's a lovely evening now, but it's a far cry from what it was first thing this morning. We was all full of anticipation that we'd get some more fish in the gnarly, but as the morning wore on and the bites didn't come, there was very little activity up there, so they'd obviously moved. There was someone fishing further up the lake that had seen nothing either, so we've come down here. This used to be one of my old homes. Used to love fishing in here, the old dugout. We're fishing a spot known as the Spur. Sort of 60 yards out, very deep water around it, rising up to 10 foot, pretty clean on top. It's done a few bites recently, so yeah, full of anticipation really. Let's hope tonight makes a difference. The reason we come down here is I didn't feel like we was going to bump into an original up there. I just got a gut feeling that we might get one down here. I've had a lot of the old originals out of this area. They do love it down here, and I would so much love to just show you one of the old ones. Fingers crossed for tonight. Right, so we left you back in the summer. Things have moved on a bit, as you can see from all the vegetation. We're now well into October, nearly the end of October actually, and we've managed to nick this one as soon as the camera crew turned up. This is one of my little babies that I'm very proud of, that's been grown on from the stock of originals. 24.5 pounds, beautiful fish, getting back to his home. Always nice to see one of my babies come to see me. We just want to put just a couple of spoms to get all these nice particles filtering down, get their attention, change the things up a little bit from out there. That'll do, I reckon. A couple of them. Ain't done too much disturbance. Elstow being a deep lake, well, a complex of two lakes, both lakes are deep. One's got an average depth of over 20 feet and the other one's got an average depth of over 30 feet. Being so deep, it tends to warm up a lot slower and cool a lot slower. So whereas most fisheries tend to shut shop really, pretty devoid of bites after the end of October, this place is coming into its own as long as they haven't had, you know, a good beating. Looking out in the lake today, it looks perfect carp fishing conditions. We've got low pressure, west-southwest. Most places you'd think, yeah, it's really good, but this is a law unto itself. We have a saying on here that carp fishing weather's no good. It seems to like high pressure and flat calm. It changes significantly this time of the year. What gets me back is it quietens down a bit. There's no mozzies. I'm not really a mixer angler, so all that's gone. They're just good honest carp trying to get a bit of food inside themselves for the winter, and that's my sort of fishing. I think it's going to be an hard bite to get one of the old originals. They're quite outnumbered now by the new generation of their stockies. Both pits have had quite a lot of pressure this weekend. It hasn't done a bite whatsoever. We know there's fish in the area, obviously, we've caught one, but I don't think they're in the numbers. You know, it ain't going to be no turkey shoot. I'm looking in the margins, the water's crystal clear. There's obviously not a lot of activity out in the pond. Like I said before, it's going to be an hard bite to get, but want to slip up sooner or later, hopefully anyway. It's like granite out in my swim, so we're going to go back with my old favourites, the slip D. Match the hatch on one. We've got some sweet corn in the mix, so we put a couple of grains of the plastic fantastic on the other one. Like concrete. Quite happy with that one. We've done all we can, the rods are out good. The wind's dropping off nicely, hopefully there'll be a good show tonight. Let's just hope so. I'm really happy with all the rods, new fresh rigs, baits bang on. Done all we can. Let's just hope they play ball. Yeah, this definitely ain't a lake to see them and fishing off the barra like drummed into you by the mainstream carp fishing. All you'll do is just chase them round in circles. They'll never settle. You want a 24-hour cycle to set traps in an area you're confident they're either in or visiting, and they will pick the time when they come in on you. You just need the bottle to stick to your guns. It's fighting like one of the old ones, that's for sure. Well, I was just in the bivvy, tying some new rigs up because I was getting a bit panicky. We couldn't get one of these old ones, and the rod's gone off, and it looks like there's a fair chance we're attached to one of them. Conditions just look off the scale, really. Couldn't believe we hadn't had a bite. It's definitely given an Oldham fight. I do believe we have ourselves one of the old ones. Save my bacon. Well, this is what it's all about. The autumn at Elstow, biblical conditions, 990 millibars, strong southwesterly. Most other lakes are slowing down, and this place is just turning fish like this up. Got to be 45 years old. What a fish, what a place. Elstow, may you be here forever. I fished a lot of places, and this is special, mate. And the way they behave, everything about it. It's just away from the rat race, an incredible venue this is. Yeah, well, I felt we should have got a take before, so what I'm going to do now, we've sealed the deal, if you like, so just going to try and take advantage of the situation. We've got one, we've played safe, but now I'm going to put some bait in and see if we can activate a better feeding response, because I just feel that there's more fish here, or as the term goes, possibly black on me. Let's see what we can make of it. Done that back to front, didn't we, geese? What did I do that? Needed to be that way first, didn't it? Didn't it? That's the trouble when you've got a Labrador and a white stick. No good. Bend it like Beckham into the wind. Get another bag. That's the one, geese. That's him. Yeah, it was a bit of a struggle getting them rods. That took several attempts. I ain't fishing that far, I'm only fishing around about 60 yards, but The lines was going halfway to Bedford. When the wind blows over here, it was only like 16, 17 mile an hour reported, but it seems a lot stronger than that. It's quite difficult to get your accuracy. They're quite fierce over here. It's not blocked at all, the path of the wind. Yeah, it can be a bit of a struggle sometimes, but I think we're in pole position at the minute. It's holding pretty good, guys. I suppose I'll be a bit cheeky to put it in a line clip. Might flat rod me and do me. No, you dares rod us. This is Elstow coming into its prime as far as I'm concerned. No mozzies, they like to eat some bait. It's always had a track record of being a fantastic late autumn water. Always a good chance now till after Christmas. Winter fishing starts New Year's Day here. This is still in the prime. Feels a good fish we got here. Got some weight to it. It's coming up the marginal shelf now. Let's see what we got. That looks a pretty good one to me. We're up, dude, and that's another big spoonlet. Quite happy with that one, geez. Elstow, what a place, mate. Be the biggest crime in the world if they ever filled this place in. Awesome, awesome lake. Well, here we go, 32.5 pounds of Elstow carp. Absolutely beautiful, probably minimum of 45 years old. A right old battle scarred warrior. This is why I've come back again and again. 25 years I've been here, on and off, and I still love these old carp. Absolutely beautiful old Bedfordshire carp. Look at the great big wrist on it, its tail, motley skin. There you go, my darling. Back to your watery home. I ain't really that fussy, exactly 7 inches. It's just a length that just suits me casting and that. Caught 1 or 2 on it, so that's all right. Absolutely perfect. There's 3 fresh rigs. I'm going to redo the rods. They turned up a bit later than I expected yesterday, so I think we've got a window to slip 3 new refreshed rigs into position and put a little bit of bait over the top. Fingers crossed they'll turn up again. I only want to put a small amount of bait out, just enough to provoke a feed. Just like the particles suspended in the water. Freshen it up. The thing about Elstow, it suits my fishing, because for the past 25 years, or the first 25 years, I was a weekend angler. With the rotors, it just made it fair for everybody. It's always been a fair lake. If you could turn up on a Friday and make the draw, all the better. You'd get the chance of drawing the coin that gave you the best swim. But there was always somewhere to fit in, even after work on a Friday. And it just kept it fair. Everybody had a chance to get a decent swim. And for years and years, that's why I've been here so long, I've fished loads of venues all over the place, especially Oxford area, where I could just, when I got fed up in the winter, when it was all bare clay around here, you could just, once the leaves had gone, we called it a day for the year, and then used to go off to other pastures, Walthamstow, Oxford, all sorts of places for a bit of winter fishing, get away from it. Come back in the spring when it had sort of regenerated. I worked 48-hour weeks, Monday to Thursday, and on a Thursday night, that was the beginning of my weekend. I could either prepare my stuff to come here on a Friday morning, and I was lucky enough to make the draw and had my chance of possibly getting one of the best swims in the country at the time. In later years, I don't fish it so much, but I still love it. It's in my blood. Well, it looks like I'm almost out of time now. Well happy that I had a 24 the first day. Was over the moon when I had a brace of the real old characters, 30s. Just really enjoyed this session. But there's something about that back pit. I really do think that I'm going to have to go and have a little dabble in there before Christmas, because that'll fish up until the new year, I believe. And there's some mysteries still swimming that one. And there's a few fish that I'd love to catch, so that's where I think I'll be next, over the back pit. Ever since I've been here, this place has been under threat of being filled in. Several plans have been submitted to redevelop it, whether it be landfill of some description or another. The most recent of which seems to be quite serious now, as it's supposed to be filled with some HS2 waste, I believe, and eventually to have housing built on it. It's just away from the rat race, an incredible venue this is. It would be a shame to see such an historic place go, but the threat is quite real nowadays. Elstow, may you be here forever. There's been site investigations going on the Elstow complex throughout this summer. Been bore holes, we've had boring rigs afloat on barges in both lakes. At one stage the lakes was even joined together with like a canalway, so that their investigation drillings their platform could be manoeuvred between the lakes. I still love it, it's in my blood. So, you know, we really are taking it serious this time. Maybe have to face the reality of this place will one day be filled in, which is a great shame, as I've spent a quarter of a century here basically. And it will upset so many other people. It'd just be a crime for this place to go. Here we are on pit 2, or the back pit as it's known, at Elstow. It's not really very good weather for pit 2 as it happens, with an average depth of over 30 foot. We had a sharp frost last night, clear blue skies I woke to this morning. A few fish showing, but I would say they're just under the surface. It's zig weather and we don't really do zigs, so they're an awful long way away from my hook baits at the moment. But it's forecast that the weather's a little bit more in my favour for tonight. I'm in pole position really. I'm in the rocky headland, a swim that gives you a view of most of the lake for most of the time. It's got one of the major features in the lake, which there are very few, and it commands an awful lot of water. We've got a couple of baited areas out there, and I'm hoping the fish will come down in the layers and visit one of them hopefully. We've probably got an average depth of over 30 feet of water in this lake, and I know now that the fish are up in them layers. There's been no activity at all over the baited areas. Brilliant sunshine this morning. Know the carp are not going to be where I want them to be. Not pit 2 weather at all. Right, I'm happy just to clip it up off of the spot. Unfortunately I haven't had a take or anything, so I know the line marker ain't going to have been disturbed. I've just let enough line out to a little bit of a crosswind started to get up, just so I know I can get exactly back on the spot. Looks like we've had a bit of crayfish attention on the pop-up, hence why the first rod was on plastic corn. Quite a few crayfish in this lake. They don't usually go out on the longer range spots. They're usually on the marginal shelf. But this swim sees quite a bit of bait, so I suppose they're used to, you know, finding a ready food supply out there. I don't do a great deal different on pit 2, but one thing I have learnt over the years is they do like a white one. So I shall be putting that out on one rod, and should they visit the baited area, I will have one rig where I've got a match the hatch pop-up, and then on the third rod I'll be putting out another plastic rig, obviously to try to counteract the crayfish if the rigs stay in position too long without carp visiting, so I know I'm at least fishing with one rod. It takes for ages to settle the lines because you've got 80 yards of it travelling across the surface, then it goes 30 plus foot straight down, and you've got to try and iron out that dog leg back to the tip. So you can't rush it, you'll end up just moving the lead. As you noticed earlier, I let off some slack, and that was to account for this crosswind. I fed the rod out long, felt the drop, but now when I iron out this bow in the line, that should end up, hopefully, exactly on the spot. I got the drop, I felt it, it's just a matter of sorting the line out now. So we just put that there to naturally let it sink. Now it's under the water, and get the last rod. We've put half a dozen spods out over the area. Conditions are a lot more favourable for tonight. Got a nice southerly breeze just starting to trickle in. 10 degrees, a whole different scenario to last night where we had frost and super high pressure. I'm a lot more confident for tonight. Hopefully it'll happen. You got to remember, pit 2 was, how can we say it? It was never officially stocked. And way before my time on here, some fish found their way in here. Many different views on how they got here, how many there was, but there was very few, that's for sure. Allegedly, a couple come from a garden centre as fingerlings. But obviously I don't know anything about it. It's just what legend has it. When I first got onto pit 1, it was a bit of a turkey shoot, I suppose, in the day for big uns. There was just a silly amount of 30 pounders, you know, up to over 40 pound, which in the day they was hen's teeth, 40 pounders. But you used to have to walk past down the old travelator between the lakes with your barra, and I just used to look at it, and it was just like, it's like Bedfordshire's little raspberry, only the brave people really fished it. There was a handful of fish in a whole lot of water. It was, for its own unique challenges, it was pretty difficult really. The biggest fish in here at the time was a fish well known called the mother, and that brought the bounty hunters in, I suppose. But the first time I knew of that fish, particular fish getting caught over 40 pounds was by a guy called Paul Sharman, Teeth as he was known. There was a backup fish called the twin, Lisa. They was the predominant ones, and the famous scaly. Little import, big import. The leathery one, speckles, and various others. Sausage, and a few sort of fish in the lower ranks that didn't get mentioned so much. The mug. And a couple of stunted doubles. When I came over here, of course, me and Albie had the first year on there. The close season was abolished. The fish had never been fished for in the spring, which, like most normal people would come to terms with now. That is the slaying season, isn't it? That used to be the close season, the first full year I ever done on Elstow. There was this guy who I've just mentioned, Paul Sharman, Teeth. And he was the first person really, to my knowledge, that brought, because it was a stepping stone to acquire a pit 1 ticket when there was a vacancy. He came on here and used his ticket. He didn't do long sessions, he was just high impact. He was ever so mobile, fished as you should, you know, as the rule book says you do, see fish and chase them. He took it to another level. And they used to come over here with a 12 egg mix, put it in where he thought they'd be, and then just move like Billy-O. And when he used to come across and ask me or Tony House for if we could come and do some pictures, there'd just be a trail of disaster all around the lake. There'd be a bivvy in the headland, a sleeping bag on the grass down by the bottom bay, you know, sacking the margins of the grassy with what he'd caught in it, and he'd get us to do a picture. Eventually, I didn't actually see it, but one sort of night in November, similar time to where we are now, late November, he managed to catch the mother at, I believe it was 42 pounds. And well, obviously it then became the target fish for the bounty hunters, you know, the list of people that pursued it, some of which caught it, is endless. But it was a proper difficult fish to catch, because it was just what you're dealing with. It's like sitting here now, I know the carp are above me, so unless you could stalk it out the margins somewhere, it was a very difficult fish to catch by design until it got big enough to attract enough attention so that the information was passed round the grapevine, and then it seemed like the people that needed to catch it, the bounty hunters, knew exactly what to do. Mentioning no names, everyone come on here and done the same thing, and it didn't take long to catch it. It used to come from 1 or 2 swims, but it wasn't really what it was about for me. There was like 20 fish in something I considered to be beyond my ability, and I just wanted to catch one so I could say I'd caught one. And funnily enough, it happened to be a common of 20 pound, and fishing pit 1 that has never had a common in it was quite a novelty, really. Although it was nothing spectacular to what I was catching on pit 1, it done something, and I wanted to catch another one. I was never in that chasing one particular fish, but being, you know, rumours have it as least as 17, as much as 21. Who knows for sure exactly what was in it, but it was around, let's just say for argument's sake, it was 20 fish. The odds was stacked seriously against you. You was never fighting for swims, it was parting some rubble in the margins and putting your rods in. You know, and it was just something that I believe was out of my league. But I don't know, there's something in me that made me want to fish for them. I was steered a little bit by Paul. I says, what you got to do to catch these fish, Paul? He says, wait until after September, when the water starts to turn over, and them fish will leave all the marginal places where you have to ambush them. He says they'll be out in the main body of the water, and if they're left alone to their own devices, they will probably loiter out in front of some swims known as decoy and the point. The point's no longer here now, it's underwater. And if you put a pop-up out there at range, the chances are you'll get an inquiry, especially if you see anything in the area. So that really was my tactic. And eventually I got a few fish, you know, one at a time obviously. Led to like a capture of a 30 pounder, which just drove me, well, what's the modern term for it? Buzzing would be the word. And I just got the bug, you know, one at a time. I got through them. I was only fishing it at the time during the days. I worked permanent night shifts. Used to set off to Elstow on quite often in them days when we had real winters. It was a heavy frost at best. Walk all the way around the pit after working 12 hours on night shifts, fixing lorries, and put 2 rods out, clipped in from the last session, cast them against the clips with 2 fresh pop-ups on, and then get in the bag for me sleep. Wake up around lunchtime, make a cup of tea before I went to bed, so I'd get up needing a bit of relief, shall we say, and believe it or not, quite a few times I'd just be sitting there sort of straightening myself out and a rod had just one tone, which was quite unbelievable really back in the day. I never ever put any bait in, all I was doing was fishing singles that they could stumble across. And I believe that year, until we had the biggest freeze up I can remember, lasted for 6 weeks I think. The seagulls turned the top of the lake white with all their, am I allowed to say shit? But up until that point I'd had the last 9 bites, 2 of which turning time back a little bit. During these visits from work, in between work and returning to work, I managed in the same week, 2 separate mornings, 2 days apart, to hook the mother, which just flat rodded me, which it was famous for. The line was lifting out right across to this swim. Then it come to the top, and there was another angler on it at the time called Nick Dodds, who had previously caught this fish at 41.5 pounds in the August. And it just come to, I knew I had to stop it, because if it went around this headland, it would cut me. I was already probably fishing in the excess of 100 yards before it just had me backpedaling, do you know what I mean? And I could see the line in the sun lifting right round to this headland there. And anyway, it come up on the surface, I stopped its run, and it come up on the top like a carrier bag and just laid there. The shock of it just laying on the top, you know. Anyway, like in slow motion, I just see its head lift out the water, and the lead and the little white pop-up go through the air, and everything's sunk in one heap. The fish, the pop-up and the lead. And I just stood there with a rod in my hand, you know. All the time Dodsey was running, and he says, "That's the mother." That's exactly what it done to me. But he was in this swim when they caught it, and he just kept walking back and back and back, and it trusted somebody on the, because they weren't a swim here then, trusted somebody to net it first time. He was just giving a running commentary, just keep walking back. And anyway, I weren't so lucky. I lost it. Not really a rod thrower, but that day I was pretty pissed off, because I never intended for that to be caught by me. But when I actually had it on the end and lost it, that really did do me. It wasn't as though I was here to catch it, but I'd seen the fish, Dodsey'd seen it, witnessed exactly what it was doing. Anyway, that was the end of that. Went back to work, had a day off the next day, couldn't sustain working 12 hours a night and fishing like that. I regrouped and turned up again a couple of days later, because I was just getting bites. There was no one fishing it. Same old story, rod's back into the same position, wakes up lunchtime after going through the same ritual, get a screaming take. And it was one of them ones where you pick the rod up, cut the spool, it was into full test curve and taking line. I thought, this is like another good one, so it was game on. It was just tip it to death, you know. There was like no hauling to get it in. Had it on, who knows, it seemed an eternity of time. It was plodding up and down the margins, and you get that feeling like this has been on too long, you know. And well, anyway, funnily enough, or not funnily, come to think of it, it come to a grinding halt on what I later discovered was like a very small bar that come out in between that and the next swim down. It obviously just grated against it and weeded itself, then powered off the way it had just come. I saw it as it rolled over before I turned it again. See a pack of scales on its shoulders, exactly the same as epaulets, but in epaulets was a miniature version of the pretty famous twin as well, before the line went slack and that come off. So yeah, pretty bad times really. I threw the rod even further. I'm not religious, but I had an argument with him upstairs, and to be honest with you, I never even walked round the lake again for years. It just completely and utterly depressed me. In the meantime, the fish come out to several of the bounty hunters, making it just a gnat's nudges short of 50 pounds. One particular angler, John Knight, caught he was here for the mother. Very good angler, used a hell of a lot of bait, kept alternating between 2 areas, but every time the fish turned up on him, he'd catch the twin. The first time he weighed it at 48 plus, then he subsequently caught the same fish 2 more occasions that year. He went through 250 key of bait, so that's what the rumour had it. He went through an incredible amount of bait anyway. And in the end, He caught it 2 more times, unhooked it in the net and never ever brought it to the bank again. God knows what that one weighed. Before going back to us rolling his bait for him and telling him to just change it, because the twin just loved it. So he come back with a redesigned bait, shall we say, and caught the mother, bless him. And you know, that was the beginning of it really. That was me done. I couldn't be bothered. I just like going fishing for the sake of going fishing. It's target hunting is just not for me. So really that sort of brought it to an end for me until Danny Fairbrass brought Gigantica and invited me and a couple of lads that fished on the syndicate with us over on Pit 1 to go and try our luck on Gigantica. And coming back from Gigantica, there'd been a hurricane over in America, and usually the old saying on here used to be 48 hours after something had hit America, you'd have really strong westerly winds coming across the Atlantic. And it was the only lake I knew that, you know, that I was fishing at the time, or, you know, that would fish in an absolutely destroying westerly wind. It was like bivvy backwards, hiding behind a mound and hang on for dear life. Later become known as Mother Fever. But anyway, I thought, I've just come back from France for a whole week. My long-suffering missus, she was at work. I come back from France with 4 amorphous clipped up at 100 yards. And like the selfish person I am, I thought, I'll have a go at Pit 2. And I'd put some little stockies in previously. Well, I hadn't actually. I'd put them in a stock pond and the water level come up so much that they escaped. We used to call them the escapees, the 2007 tribe. I went over just for something to do, levered these 4 rods out, just like the old days when I'd done it with 2 rods. I put 2 sets out and I had 5 fish that day, including one called Twisted Scale. Twisted Scale went on to be one of the new breed of, how can we put it, target fish. It was 3412 if memory serves me right, which was a beautiful carp. Didn't even know it existed. Someone had obviously slipped them in from a little pond up the top in what's now the Tarmax Works, and there's nothing to do with this complex. And I caught, along with it, 4 of the little escapees that we'd bred along on site to restock the lakes with the original strain of fish. And that was the beginning of it really. And every now and again when the mood takes me, I'll come and fish over here. Although it's got a bit industrial around here now and it's like the M25 with cement mixers, it's just something about the place and I just want to fish it. You're up against it in lots and lots of different ways, but now and again, you know, there's some fish that do like a bit of bait, like most lakes, and there's some that are very rare visitors to the bank that obviously make a living on their own, by their own devices, and don't need to be tamed by your bait. You know, the challenges on here are just pretty unique really if you put them all together. It's for a certain audience, you know what I mean? A certain angler thrives on here. You do get left alone. You've got a huge slice of water each. You got no one casting over you, no one annoying you. You really have got solitude. So if you can cope with what you're up against, perfect venue. Right, all 3 rods are back out on the spot. All the rigs are perfect. All the casts went where I intended. I didn't put any more bait in because I believe what was already out there ain't been touched. I know the carp are here. They're probably still above the bait. It's all down to this last night and a bit of luck they'll drop on it. Well, it looks like the session's going to come to an end soon. The rain's moving in. It weren't meant to be. It looks like the weather was against us, so it was up in the layers. What can I say? The pressure dropped last night, and Angler over the other side has caught a couple of fish this morning, and it just goes to prove the point. Once they come down out of them layers, they're catchable. We've got up till Christmas. It's not even got cold yet. I'll come back and have another go and see if we can get something. Well, here we are around my house. I'm in back garden with my little pond that my wife doesn't feel's too little anymore. She had to sacrifice her flowers for my little water garden. There's a few little pets here that I've hatched myself, and me and the missus come up here, have a glass of wine, and back in the day when Len was still about, Len come up here, you know, and we used to like have our little fishery meetings, or if it weren't round his house, at the kitchen table, it'd be up here on a nice day. He used to say what had got to be done or how things were. Len is a massive, or was, or still is, a massive influence in my life. I first saw him back in about 75 when a little Viva used to fly around of Essie and Sacks in the boat making Bedfordshire on the carp mat. Yeah, it was all a bit innocent in them days, I suppose. At the time I was match fishing at a local club water, and he was one of the sort of carp men with his converted rods 10 foot off the floor with knitting needles and silver paper. Back in the day, you know what I mean, air rig and all that. With his side hook taters. And he used to swear by him, he used to catch loads. But they was all so secretive in them days, you know. He used to be there in his little floppy hat, and his daughter Lisa with a sketch pad, charcoal in the interpretation of the lake, I suppose. And I just used to leave him be, you know. He was just like, just wanted his peace. He was never a mixer really. He liked quietness, and so anyway, just let him be. Years later, when I got the bug for carp fishing, like I'd be sitting on my seat box all day, scratching to put a silver lining in the bottom of the net, backache, living out of a flask, you know what I mean? And I'd see him pop down there for a couple of hours with Lisa, and some side hook spuds they turned out to be. Obviously it was so secret the way they was put in the water. I remember watching him play a fish once. I weren't in the swim, but the boils and the water turned over, which, you know, by the Loch Ness Monster, that was probably a whole 8 pound or something back in the day. It just about had a double in it. It was that sort of water. Just seeing the chaos in the swims when he was playing one compared to my little sprats, swung in and shook off a barbless hook into a net, you know what I mean? I just thought, I'm gonna have a go at this. And it started off a 3-line luncheon meat, and then we was on Richworth tooties like everybody else in the day, and I decided that the club water, now everybody started to go carp fishing. You know, nothing compared with today, but it was, you know, it was fast expanding even in them days. The hair rig had been published, and the bolt rig. They caught themselves, and you even had an alarm bell to tell you when they'd got one on the end, didn't you? You could just wake up when you felt like it and wind it in. Moving on, Len controlled Linear Fisheries. His first ever lake was at Woburn Sands. I didn't join that one, it was not what I wanted, but he also had the lease of Great Linford complex of lakes off of ARC, and there was a lake there called Rockler. You know, it was turn up a bag of Richworths, ping them everywhere with a catapult, get something that wouldn't tangle, throw it as far as you could and ping a few Richworth about, and I probably ain't improved much, but you know, we caught loads of these little fish. PB out there was about 13 pound, and from then he lost that complex to Marl, that turned it into sort of asset stripped it and just ruined it in my eyes. And at the same time, Len was lucky enough to be approached by Smiths of Bletchington, and that's where the Linear Fisheries Oxford was born. And lucky enough to know of Len and Roy Parsons from the Milton Keynes venture, it all shipped and it was reborn, if you like, but much better, because they was willing to help him stock the lakes. Manor had some better fish in it. Terry Hearn, obviously, in the early days with Popeye, pin scale and cut tail, etc. You know, all the likes of Frank Warwick with a big chuck in the arena. It was well famous, you know, it was like a bit of status back in the day. And we started fishing that after we acquired the Elstow ticket, which was way beyond my ability. And in them days, there weren't no rap sticks, and you know, it was drive and survive, and if you didn't know it, just leave and find somewhere easier. But just out of sheer determination and getting on with Len, you know, we contributed to the fishery and done what we could to keep it going. He knew that I was obsessed with the place. And then he gave me a little bit of room to manoeuvre in Oxford. I was allowed to fish all the lakes in Oxford, the syndicate. He liked to think we sort of shared the same ideas about carp fishing, as in we couldn't fish together because he didn't even want to fish his own lakes. What I find absolutely amazing about Len, if you pardon the pun, is just how much influence he had on the world of carp fishing, along with a lot of other things. Not many people really knew Len, from BSG, all the artwork on all their stuff. He wrote kiddies' books. He was behind all the TV programmes, you know, for carp filming. Quite an amazing character, really, without all the fancy equipment of nowadays, you know. Big old heavy camera on his shoulder, filming Matties catching a great white in sort of Australia. Camera on his shoulder for nearly 6 weeks, must have squashed him, it's probably why he was short. Filmed all Matties' total fishing. People just don't realise what he was responsible for. Stocking half the lakes. Basically, you can see the monster he's created with Linear Fishery Oxford. There's nowhere like it, is there really? It's just shocking, his achievements. And when he used to say to me, we're going to do something with Elstow, and I want you to make it the best syndicate it can be. And I said, the only way you're going to do that is to just leave it alone. We just drive and survive, fish rustic, you know, just not where carp fishing's gone. I don't want to be funny to where it has gone, but it's just not for me, and it wasn't for Len. So we tried to keep Elstow off of the got to be visited by everyone, smashed to bits, buzzing and transport a scene, and you know, it's just Elstow. Just keep it as it is, keep the real fish going. That's basically what it was all about. And during it, you know, when he parted company with Oxford, that was all he had left to, you know, fishing wise, to put his devotion into. He'd done his filming days, he'd gone back to writing children's books. We used to see each other regular. You know, he'd ring me, I'd go over his house, he'd come over here, whatever. When I got really ill, he used to come and visit me when I couldn't go out and stuff. In the end, when his poor wife sadly contracted motor neurone and sadly passed away, obviously where at the same time Fran was going through his, you know, the woman he married was going through the same thing with her partner for many years, and together they ended up, and it meant so much to the pair of them from their previous partners. They shared so many horrible experiences of watching them deteriorate that they was absolutely dedicated to making people aware of it and raising money to help people and people's families that was affected by it. When the motor neurone events was charity events, they started at Linear Fisheries. Well, obviously they was there all the time. Len and Fran put blood, sweat and tears into making sure it was all right. It was attended by all the biggest household names in carp fishing. Len was so well respected, he had no problem at all having people queuing up to help him. Whatever he asked, there would always be people to help. But the modern day carp fishing fraternity have just got absolutely no idea who he was. He was just such a humble bloke, never done anyone a bad deed to get on in life. He's just a perfect gentleman of carp fishing. Lovely, lovely bloke, and he'd be forever missed. And I vowed to him that when we started breeding the fish on the ponds on site, that I would stop it ever changing from what it was. While I still drew breath and the carp was still in them lakes and we had a lease, I was not going to allow anyone to change it from how I found it, and it'd be like that till the end. Either we haven't got the lakes or I'm pushing up daisies. It don't change, that's it, that's the progression for me. Leave it alone. Well, I said I'd come back and get a winter carp, but unfortunately Boris didn't let us out till the 29th of March. We finally caught up with one. It's one of 3 this session as it happens. Old as you like, proper old Elstow. Thanks for leaving it behind for us, Len. Right, Len, I know you're up there watching, mate. This is for you.